Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Good morning. I'm Chairman Michael McCall of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Along with me, Ranking Member Greg Meeks and other members from the committee. We've done this several times to highlight the hostages in Gaza. And it's very sad to see these families whose loved ones are trapped in hell in Gaza, and they can't get out. We were successful in getting 80 of those hostages out, but only 2 Americans. We still have Americans in Gaza that we need to return home. I don't know if some of you saw over the weekend, more videos were released of Hamas taking videotapes of their atrocities, raping women and men. Gruesome videos of tearing a baby out of a pregnant mother's womb. They had tape over her mouth and they were beating her and then literally carving her baby out of her womb and killing the baby. Then they killed her. Raping, multiple rapes of one victim, and the last rapist shot her in the head. This is sick. My dad, fought that war, World War II, against the Nazis, anti-Semitism, and he bombed them, and they defeated them, and we had the Holocaust then, and it is shocking to me that we now have witnessed the largest killing of the Jewish people since the Holocaust, since my father's war in World War II. Never again was a saying. Never again are we going to see this. But here we are in this time and age, and it's happening again. The hatred for the Jewish people, the anti-Semitism. And to those who are for the Palestinians, I say I am too. We want to liberate the Palestinian people from Hamas. Hamas is oppressing the Palestinian people. And until Hamas is gone, the Palestinians will never be free, and we will never have a peaceful Middle East. So I say our goal is the same. It's for the Palestinian people. When we went to Israel, Mr. Meeks and I, Prime Minister Netanyahu told us 2 things. He said, 1, Israel is not going to occupy Gaza, but guess who else is not? Hamas. It will be the Palestinian people governing themselves in Gaza, not Israel and not Hamas. That is the goal. That is our goal. That is our foreign policy objective. And things are getting very tense right now in the Red Sea with commercial vessels being attacked by the Houthi rebels. Hezbollah's rockets are starting to rain in more at a pace that is concerning because we want to contain Hamas in Gaza. We don't want this to escalate in the Middle East. I met with a mother of a son, and in Hebrew his name was the Son of Light. And I thought that was very appropriate, the Son of Light over darkness, because what we're seeing in Gaza is very dark now. And we have these hostages, these families. Bring them home now. Bring them home. They are in darkness, literally, in tunnels. I talked to a mother. Her daughter came out, and she said my daughter was in darkness. Like, she hadn't seen the sun in 50 days in a tunnel, and she was in darkness. And they brought her out into the light. We need to provide that light. The light always overcomes the darkness. And I thought that analogy is so true. And we need to bring them home. And yeah, we do need to save the children of Gaza. We need to save all human beings. Hamas is responsible for this. Not Israel, not the Palestinian people. And I think if we get that straight, we can understand what the goal and the end result should be. So, Moses said, let my people go. Let them go. Free them. There's no purpose to terrorize them anymore. Let these hostages go. Let them go and return home to their families. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to my dear friend, Mr. Greg Meeks, the ranking member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the chairman has indicated, I thank my colleagues for being here in a bipartisan way so that the voices of Congress hears the voices of those who have been victimized, to keep faith and hope in the plot of those that were brutally kidnapped on October the 7th and have been, we don't know what with all of them has happened and the locations and where they're being kept, whether or not they're getting the medications or that they need, or whether or not they're eating, or what kind of conditions they're in. And that's why I say to the families who are most important to be here, I thank AJC for having you here, because we can never let people forget. We can't let them forget. You know, we had moments of hope when we had the truce going on, yet your families are not back. And we can't ever forget till every family member is back home with their families. No one can really imagine the grief and the pain that you're going through every day. Hard to move forward, hard to sleep, hard to wonder. I just can't imagine going through what you're going through. But yet you're still standing strong, and you're here to tell the world, please don't forget. Don't forget our family. Let's bring them home. Let the dialogue and conversation continue. Let's not just forget and move forward while these families are still suffering because their loved ones are held hostage by Hamas. Mr. McCall had it right. Their loved ones just got up on October the 7th, a Saturday. I'm told it was a beautiful day out, to live their lives in peace, not threatening anyone, not going after anyone, not hating anyone, just to live their lives in peace. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, terrorists hit the ground and took them, killing, raping, burning, beheading so many others. And yes, there was a peace, a ceasefire agreement on October the 6th. That ceasefire agreement was broken on October the 7th by Hamas. And so one of the things that we have to ask, because many of us, all of us, want peace. Every life, every single life is important. And we need peace in the Middle East. And many of us have been working hard for a two-state solution for years. But let me just ask you this thing. Does Israel have the right to exist? And if you agree with me that Israel has the right to exist, then you have to have a party, if you're negotiating with, that says Israel has the right to exist. And this is what we've got to remember about Hamas. They're the ones that don't want peace. They're the ones that say we got to wipe Israel off the map. They're the ones that say that they don't like and they hate the Jews. They're the ones that are causing the problems that's there. For if they simply said and agreed, and it's too late for them to do that now because they've got to be held accountable for the atrocity that they've committed. But all they had to do was say, let's figure this out and let's work in peace. Israel has the right to exist. That's how we save all lives and moves forward so that there can be peace in the Middle East. Taking these loved ones is not the way to peace in the Middle East. Holding them is not the way to peace in the Middle East. That's not the way to get peace. That's not the way to live side by side. Releasing them, continuing to have the conversation, talking about Israel's right to exist, talking about how we can move forward from here, is the right way. But we can't get there. There's still hell. Great work has been done to bring some home. But some is not good enough. We need them all home. And I take special notice that you see here young men. These families want their young men home. We want our American citizens home. They have not been brought home. And on this one, how can you not agree with these families? I don't care who you are. How can you not agree with these families? Let's send the message. Let the world not forget that their family members, for over 80 days now, have not been home. We have to take it deep, as I do. Imagine your family going out on a Saturday morning, peacefully, having fun. Some in their homes, having lunch or breakfast, about to have dinner, talking. And then all of a sudden, terrorists break in. Just imagine. Will you be able to forget them? Would you be able to just continue to move on? Would you think it's the right thing to do? I think if anybody has any inch of humanity within them, and I believe everybody in this room does, you would say, let these hostages go so that they can be back with their families and continue to live their lives. And their lives are not going to be easy because of what they've already and the trauma they've gone through. But bring them home. That's why they're here. That's why these family members are here. They're here to say, just don't forget them. And we're not. I can tell you on a bipartisan basis, all these members coming in here, we will not forget them. And we will continue to stand until they're brought home. God bless you.
I always admire my partner, my friend Greg, who speaks from the heart. And he's right. We will not forget ever until they come home. 2 days from now is December 7th. It'll be 2 months since the horrific attack. It will also be Pearl Harbor Day, when the United States was attacked without warning, just like your loved ones were attacked without warning on October the 7th. We need to bring them home. We need to bring them home now. So we want to hear from the families, family members. And Jillian Kay would like to speak about her stepson, Sagi.
Sagi, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
please.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Sagi's father, who just came in, Jonathan. I do just want to thank Congressman. Thank you for your incredibly strong, supportive words, and the American administration has been amazing for us. Sagi is a dual American-Israeli citizen, so he is one of the American hostages that is still in Gaza. And you have to forgive me if I stumble a little bit. My heart breaks every day, and talking about this every day is a new, thank you, sweetheart, is a new sort of impossibility telling the story, but we'll tell the story again. So Sagi is 35 years old. He is the father of two beautiful little girls who are 2 and 6. And my daughter-in-law, Avital, is due with their 3rd little girl this week. Sagi and his wife and their children, my stepdaughter and her husband and their children, and of course my husband, lived on kibbutz Nir Oz. And I say lived because the kibbutz doesn't exist anymore. I'm sure you've read the news. Over a quarter of the hostages and the people who were murdered on October 7th were from our kibbutz. And many, many of them are still there. And just this past week, we got horrible news as it dribbled in that 4 different people were dead that we hoped were still alive in Gaza, but were dead. Either their bodies were discovered in Gaza because they had already been killed and taken there, or they died in captivity. So it's been a hard week for us. So a little bit more about Sagi, because I only have a few minutes and I want Jonathan to be able to speak. So on October 7th, that morning, Sagi was on the kibbutz. He woke up very early because that was his way. He was a builder and a tinkerer. He had a love of old buses, actually, and he had done something amazing with his wife. They had created a traveling grocery store out of an old bus that they had taken to some communities that were food deserts. And they really were committed to that mission, and Sagi was getting up to go and start to work on the next bus. And it was early in the morning, about 6:30, and he was the first person probably to see the terrorists as they were starting to break into the kibbutz. He ran onto a rooftop. He looked and saw that that was going on, and he alerted everyone on the text chain that there were terrorists in the kibbutz and they should go into their safe rooms and lock the door. He ran back to his house. He put Avital and his daughters in the safe room. He rigged the door so that it would lock, because I don't know if it's a fact that many people understand about the safe rooms, so-called. These rooms were created to protect people from rockets, not from terrorists, not from someone coming in to the house, but from rockets. So they don't lock, because to have them locked from the inside is dangerous if there's a hit and something happens. So there was no way to actually be safe in your safe room if someone was coming into your house. So he rigged the door, and he went back outside to fight with us, to do what he could for the kibbutz. And we don't really know, because we really have no eyewitness accounts. And the last time anyone heard from him was at 9:30 in the morning on that morning. We have no word of anything. We know nothing about where he is or how he is. And I'll just say, you know, I'm a stepmother, but I'm a mother. And as the hostages are coming back, and we are all hearing about the conditions that children and women and old people and injured people are living in, it's unfathomable. I don't think any of us sleep anymore. Do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, just a couple of words. First of all, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a sight for sore eyes. I flew in, got here about an hour ago from a remote site in Israel where my kibbutz has been relocated, or the community has been relocated, because the actual community no longer exists, as Gillian said. And so it's a sight for sore eyes to see a bipartisan group of Congress people after this journey and after the last 60 days. Sagi is one young man of approximately 130 hostages who are still being held. As Gillian mentioned, every day, every moment counts. We know that many of the hostages are injured. We know that they're not receiving proper medical help. We know that the Red Cross has not been allowed into Gaza in order to visit with the hostages. Sagi, like any other young man, wants to see his family grow. He's a builder, he's a creator, and the world will be a much better place with him continuing to create and build for the Jewish and non-Jewish communities in Israel and our neighbors. Thank you for all of your help, and with God's help, all of these 130 will be home soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was in the kibbutz Kfar Aza a year ago, and I met the families. I went to this daycare center with these children. They were very happy, although they've been terrorized by rockets on a weekly basis from Gaza, from Hamas, but they were happy. So why do you choose to live here? Well, my family's always lived here. My family's always lived here. It was really sad the morning of October the 7th to get the phone call that entire kibbutz had been massacred. Everyone I met was killed, including the children at the daycare center, in the most grotesque manner, burning them alive, beheading them, and they're all gone. And as you said, your kibbutz, it's gone. It's absolutely gone. This is a reality of terrorism. This is what Hamas does. So next, we want to hear from Dalia Kusner, who's going to speak about her brother-in-law, actually two of them, Eitan Horan and Yair Horan as well.
Hi, everyone. Before I start, I want to thank you for this opportunity and for having us and for all the support. Thank you. And for all the support and the commitment that you're showing toward us. It's very important. I think that one of the reasons that the U.S. and Israel has such a strong alliance and union is because we're sharing, I think, the most essential values of democracy and the sanctity of life. And unfortunately, you were speaking about the light and the darkness. And unfortunately, this is not something that all the world, these are not values that the rest of the world shares. So I think we should be strengthening and focusing on that. My name is Dalia. I was born in Argentina, but I live in Israel. I hold Argentinian citizenships as the rest of my family. These are my two brothers-in-law. This is Yair and this is Eitan. It's not me, the person who should have been standing here today in front of you, but my husband, Amos. But since October 7th, he's just lying in bed and heartbroken and defeated and devastated because both his siblings are not here. And there's not much he can do. And I think that's one of the hardest things that they were calling us on this horrible Saturday in the morning. And we heard the news and we got the messages from them. And our first reaction was, okay, we live in the center of Israel. Let's just get in the car and drive there and do something to help. And then we kept on reading the news and watching TV, and we understood that, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do at the moment. I'm here to bring their voice. Many people say that their voice is not being heard right now, and I want to say it's not true. They are being held in the worst place a human being can imagine. They're being held by Hamas, but their voice is the silence that we get from, unfortunately, many countries around the world, and the silence that we cannot hear them, but but it is a voice, and I want to bring it here. Until a week ago, we had no news from them. We didn't know whether they're alive, whether they're injured. They were taken from Kibbutz Nir Oz, as they talked before. 1 out of 4 people in Kibbutz Nir Oz was either murdered or kidnapped. And they were taken from there. And a week ago, we got signs of life. And we were super happy knowing that they're alive and they're not injured, and I don't want to say they're in good health, but at least they're not wounded. And on the same time, we also got those messages from these people who came back, who were telling us about the suffering and the starvation and the psychological terror they're going through, and that they're not getting their medicines, and torture and every other word you can imagine. But they're alive, and since they are alive, and most of the rest of the hostages are still alive, so we need you to understand that every second is critical, and every minute that goes by, their chances to keep on being alive are decreasing, because a human being cannot go through those kind of things. And we're dealing with Hamas, which are, I think, among the worst terrorist organization in the world, and we just don't know what's going to happen to them in any moment. So we need you. I can be standing here for a while talking about them. They're both of them amazing people, just like your, I guess, brother and sisters-in-law and your sons and daughter. They're amazing people who have all their life and all their dreams and everything in front of them. Eitan is an educator, and he's the funniest guy in the room always, and he's a performer, and he sees his life as a mission of making people happier, and that's what he does in every place he goes, and people recall him by the fact. And Yair is the guitar person. He walks around with a guitar, he plays, he makes people sing. He works at the kibbutz as kind of the handyman, so he goes to the elderly people's house and he just talks to them and does things with them, and also fix their houses. He's in charge of all the holidays and the bar, the pub in the kibbutz, and he sees this as a very important mission of bringing people together. And as you were mentioning before, the world is a better place with Eitan and Yair and the rest of the 130 hostages here. I also want to say that they're the most amazing uncles to my kids. I left home with a broken heart because my kids are suffering the fact that they cannot know, play, see, hug their uncles. They play with them, they hug them, they take them to the park, they build them special wooden toys. They're these amazing uncles, and having to deal with the war and with the situation of my husband and the missing of my 2 brothers-in-law, and having to explain my 8-year-old kid why they took them. They were peace people. They were working hand with Palestinians inside their kibbutz, because Kibbutz Nir Oz is a kibbutz that invests in all these kind of relationships and coexist. So having to explain my kids that these people just enter and took them, and we don't know when are they coming home, if they are coming home at all. So I want to ask your help and your support, and I want to ask you to keep on telling the story, and I want to ask you to embrace Yair and Eitan and Sagi and all those stories that you're going to be listening to make them part of your family, and by having them part of your family, so we can increase the light, and hopefully we can, or at least you can help us to bring them as soon as we can, because every minute is important and their life is at risk. So we need to bring them home now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalia. Next, we have Moshe Lavi to speak about her brother-in-law, Omri Moran.
Thank you for all the representatives who are here, and I know the majority of representatives are with us all the time, advocating for our loved ones. My name is Moshe. I'm a proud Israeli. I'm a proud Sephardic Mizrahi Jew, Middle Eastern, proud Middle Eastern, who seeks only peace in my part of the world. And my very identity, physical and spiritual, was attacked on October 7th, when my entire family was subjugated to terrorism, when my brother-in-law, Omri Moran, was kidnapped from his home in Kibbutz Nachal Oz, about 2.5 miles from the Gaza Strip, when my sister, Lishai, and two baby nieces, Ronnie, who is 2.5 years old, Alma, who is 8 months old now, were in captivity for hours, tortured by Hamas terrorists, Hamas and their accomplices, members of other Palestinian terrorist organizations, and Palestinian civilians who joined them on that dark day. They were tortured for hours, abused, saw their community burned, saw their neighbors being executed. They were grouped within other families and eventually separated when Omri was taken alongside Tzachi Dan and Natalie and Judith Ranan from Nachal Oz. Few others were taken that day. Some were already released, but Omri is still there. I speak here on his behalf because Omri is still in a tunnel, underground, subjugated to additional torture, mental and physical torture, as described by hostages who were released. As of last week, he was alive, but that was for a specific timestamp. More than a week has passed, and we all know that every second in captivity is eternity. Every second in captivity risks Omri's life and the life of all the hostages who remained in the Gaza Strip, subjugated by Hamas and their accomplices. I want to thank the American Congress, the American people, for being with us every day. And I want to say one thing, that this is a humanitarian issue, irrespective of one's political disposition, whether you demonstrate for one side or another, for one cause or another, always attach to it one thing: the release of the hostages, because they're above politics. They have a humanitarian plea, it's our humanitarian plea. So I take this opportunity to speak to those who are not always with us, but should be with us as families of hostages, with us in the plea of in the name of humanitarian, name of humanity and justice. Omri is 46 years old. He's a man, but he's also an amazing son to his father Danny, a loving husband to his wife Lishai, and a devoted father to his two daughters, Ronnie and Alma. He's a psychotherapist, healing other people through his work. He's a gardener in Kibbutz Nachal Oz, healing people through the work of nature. He's a spiritual man connected to the hills, the fields of the northwestern Negev, and also where he grew up in the north of Israel. He loves sports. Only last week, a friend of him went to Anfield in Liverpool, saying that a Red is being held hostage. And what happened there? That his friend was taken out of the stadium for merely saying that Omri Moran is held hostage by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Omri loves Maccabi Tel Aviv in football and basketball. His favorite author is Haruki Murakami. He has all the books. He had all the books in his library. Why I say had, because the library was destroyed on October 7th alongside his house. It was ransacked, ravaged. And I want Omri back. I want my brother-in-law back, and I call on everyone. I call my own government, the Israeli government, to do everything they can to return the hostages above any other mission. And I call the American government to put all the pressure on the international community to do all they can to return the hostages. And I call Hamas sponsors and funders, regimes like Qatar, Iran, Russia, and others, to do all they can to make sure the hostages are taken out of the equation, because they shouldn't be there. Omri should not be there. And I call the international community, international organizations, the United Nations, which is apathetic to our misery, and the ICRC, which I believe is less apathetic, but has no power to do what they're supposed to do in this conflict, and is visiting the hostages and ensuring they receive medical care. So that's what I call for them to do. And I call for you to keep pressuring, irrespective of your political disposition, keep pressuring for this issue, for us, human beings. We're all fellow human beings, members of humanity. We're all Homo sapiens, irrespective of where we come from. Please, let Omri go. Let all the hostages go. Bring them home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I think we can all agree on bring them home. Bring them home now. Next we have Inbal Zach to speak about his cousin, Tal Shaham.
Good afternoon. My name is Inbal. Tal, as you see, is a father and the husband. They all came back a few days ago from the kingdom in Gaza, but Tal is still there. We don't know anything about him. They just came to visit in Kibbutz Be'eri for the holiday. They just came to visit, and they all kidnapped from Be'eri. Adi, his wife, Naveh, Yael, Shoshan, the grandmother, they all taken by the window because they couldn't open the door of the shelter, of the safe room. A few days ago, Yael asked me when I came to visit her in the hospital, when I can play with Daddy. And I say, I don't know, but actually I don't know if he's still alive, because when they took him, they put him in the trunk of the car, and he asked from the Hamas to bring him to the front row. He said, I can't breathe, I don't have air, and you know what? We don't know anything. I just want to say part of the deal with the Hamas was that they're not separating families. So they separated family, but not only my family. All of my friends here, they have, they are someone, brother, sister, husband, friend. Just imagine that it was your family, and it could happen to you, not only to us in Israel. It could happen every place now. So they are not only my family and my friend's family. This is your family as well, and we're asking you to take care of them and to bring them back home immediately now. Thank you.
Next we have Fadila Talal to speak about his son, Samer Talal.
أول شيء قبل ما أبدأ في أي شيء أود أن أشكر كل أعضاء الكونغرس.
He says before he'd like to start with anything, he wants to thank all the members of Congress who are in attendance. I am Fadila Talal. I am the father of Samer.
14 كان فيه الشغل بيشتغل في كيبوتز نير عام الفقاسة.
On October 7th, Samar Talalka, his son, was working in the chicken farm in Kibbutz Niram when the attack occurred from Gaza.
اتصل علي في نفس اليوم في نفس اللحظة ونفس الساعة. في شيء غريب كان عندي بيصير في الكيبوتز.
He called him, his son called him, and was telling him that something strange was happening going on near the kibbutz.
كانت في اللحظة هذيك طلع نار كثيف في الكيبوتز وجنب الحدود مع غزة.
He says that at this time there was heavy rocket fire that was going on the border near the kibbutz coming from the Gaza Strip.
أنا 7:03 آخر مكالمة كانت.
At 7:20 a.m., that was the last contact that he had with his son. It was a phone conversation.
من يومتها لليوم ما بعرف. ما عرفت أننا في غزة من صورة.
He only learned that his son was in Gaza from a picture.
من 7/10 لليوم ما نعرف إنه ولا حاجة.
From October 7th until today, he has no news of his son and he knows nothing about what's going on with him.
وأنا بدي أعمل فكل واحد بيقدر يساعد يرجع ولدي سامر ولاد كل ولاد فضل نفس الشيء يرجع ولد دار سليم.
He says he hopes and he puts his hope in anyone who can bring back his son Samir and the children and loved ones of all the hostage family members.
لأنه نفس الوجع نفس الوجع اللي بحسه.
Because they're experiencing the same pain that he's experiencing.
في عندنا في المجتمع البدوي.
He's speaking, so Fuad is from the Bedouin Israeli community, and he's speaking about the impact of the attack on the Bedouin community.
في 4 سامر في 2 من زيادنا وواحد من القاضي.
He says there are several others who are still kidnapped, held hostage from the Bedouin Israeli community. In addition to Samir, there's 2 more from the Ziyadne family and 1 more from the Gadi family.
كانوا هذول العمال بيشتغلوا عادي عمال.
These were workers, laborers. They were just working. They were not in any combat role.
I want to thank the families for being here and for your powerful testimony about your loved ones. We'll do everything we can within our power to bring them home, and especially the American citizens. We have several members that have showed up today, and I want to give them an opportunity to say a few words. And I will start out with Young Kim, who is the chairwoman of the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
All Ranking Member Mix for holding this press conference and bringing families of the loved ones who are taken hostages right now, whose whereabouts we don't know. And I want to join my colleagues here to add my voice and support in making sure that we amplify our concerns so we can bring everyone home. I represent California's 40th who have come to talk to me. And one thing is very clear. There is not one person, whether you are from Israel, whether you're a Jewish American, whether you're a Korean American like me, doesn't matter what your background and family, whether you have friends, relatives there or not, we are all affected. So I'm honored to be here with my colleagues, AJC, and the brave family members and individuals who are held hostage by Hamas. So I want to thank you for being here, for your bravery, and for speaking out and telling us about your family story. I just want you to know we're here to be with you, and we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to support every family members until we see them. And I just want you to know that I also sent an unequivocal voice in condemning Hamas atrocities at the highest levels. That's why I led a letter with 87 colleagues to, this is a bipartisan letter we sent to UN Women for their failure to condemn Hamas' barbaric October 7 attacks, including the heinous, premeditated sexual violence against women and their one-sided approach to this. So we have a lot of family members, young men and women, people of all ages. But this effort to bring everybody home, we cannot find a solution if we would not work together, which is why I'm here to join my colleagues, and I'm very, very thankful for our leaders for putting this together. So thank you. We're with you.
We say also we passed our bipartisan resolution condemning Hamas and in support of the state of Israel, and it had more co-sponsors than ever in the history of the Congress, which is a strong message that we told the Prime Minister when we were in Israel that America does stand behind Israel. And our next speaker actually was with me in Israel, Ms. Madeline Dean, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
I thank the chairman and the ranking member, but mostly I thank the families. Thank you for sharing your stories, your unimaginable pain, and I hope that you know that we stand with you. We will not be silenced, we will not forget, and every one of us, I think we can say, believes that task number one is the return of all the hostages. It must be hostages first. It is staggering to us that the International Red Cross has had such limited ability to understand where and how the hostages are. We all know of the inhumanity of October 7th and the horrific attack by Hamas, the utter inhumanity of it. And I agree with the family members here that this is about our common humanity. Nothing should separate us from that cause, our common humanity. These families have not just suffered, and I'd say just in a very strange way, the taking of their brothers-in-law, their cousins, their sons, their daughters. They've suffered horrific trauma, the brutal attack, the loss of so many of your community members, the loss of children. And so I'll be brief to just say, let's never forget, and let's demand of the world. It is not just the U.S. that will call upon this. The world must call upon the end of the hostages being held. 136 hostages, I believe, remain in Gaza, 119 men, 17 women and children, 10 hostages 75 and older, among them 8 Americans, including all of the beautiful people you just spoke about. We had the opportunity to travel with this committee, and we spoke to the Prime Minister, to the Minister of Defense, of course, and our ambassador, to say, bring the hostages home. It is a question of valuing and lifting up our common humanity. Bring them home now. Thank you.
Common humanity. Thank you so much. Next, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Darrell Issa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Meeks, thank you. One of the advantages of serving a long time here and being old enough is that you can focus today's hostages on the hostages of 1979. This is not the first time that Iran has used proxies to take hostages and to flaunt them to the rest of the world. Let there be no doubt, we know who is responsible for funding Hamas, who is responsible for funding Hezbollah, who is responsible for the periodic but systematic taking of hostages that have gone on since the 1970s. I'm going to speak, perhaps, Tom, you spoke as a Sephardic Jew. I speak as someone whose ancestors are from that region, where for hundreds and hundreds of years we coexisted, we lived in a region in peace, because the people behind the scenes wanted that peace. I'm not speaking well of the Ottoman that my grandfather left but I am speaking to the peace that existed, that would exist today, to the people whose loved ones would be back home with them, if not for Iran pulling the trigger with their proxies in order to shell Israel and to take hostages. And so, as my colleagues have all said, it's time for the world to unite behind demanding these hostages be brought home. With no more concessions, the hostages must be released before any talk of reconciliation occurs. And no talk of reconciliation can occur unless Iran is outed for being the trigger to this terrible taking of hostages. And on that, this committee is bipartisan and resolute, and Congress will not forget any more than we forgot our hostages in the 70s. Thank you.
Next, we have a gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler.
Thank you, Chairman McQuell, Ranking Member Meeks, for calling this assemblage. America will never forget December 7th, 1941, and the world must never forget October 7th, 2023. Hostages were seized, and that's a war crime. Of course, attacking civilians, killing them, raping them, beheading babies are all war crimes. Hamas has done this before. If not stopped, we'll do it again. The hostages must be freed. There is no way to free them except by negotiation, as was done for the hostages who were released, or by overrunning Hamas and freeing them, as may have to be done now. That's why when I hear calls for a ceasefire from some of our friends who do not understand, they say ceasefire, people getting killed, people get killed in wars. But that's Hamas's fault for starting the war, for continuing the war. And a ceasefire would simply say, leave the hostages where they are. And that's unacceptable. So we demand the release of the hostages as a precondition for any peace that may occur. We pray for the release of the hostages. We will do everything in our power to secure it so that they may return to their families as quickly as possible. And to the families of the hostages, I say, be strong, of good faith, chazak v'yamatz.
Next, we have a member of the Foreign Affairs team that went to Israel, Mr. Max Miller, who's one of two Jewish Republicans in our conference. Max.
Thank you, Chairman. I came here today to speak to you all. I didn't come to speak to them. So I'm going to address my remarks to you. Know you have someone, and you have a bipartisan delegation that care about you. Know you have someone in me, and I'll speak for myself, that is Jewish, that is an American, that's a Marine, and yeah, I'm a Republican and just wanted to. And that's okay. But know that we care. Know that I care. Know that your loss and your pain is my loss. I lost 2/3 of my family at Auschwitz. Before we went to Israel, they had that Palestinian protest. And I sat there with the chairman and the ranking member, and I looked at him and I said, is this what my family felt like in Bialystok, Poland, before they were ripped out of their homes? Never again means never again. And when I mean that, I mean that. And we will continue to stand up for the hostages. We will continue to stand up for Israel and any Jew, whether they're in Israel or all across this world. And I have made it my mission in Congress to stand up for our people so that you're not scared, okay? Because we have been scared our entire lives. I'm not scared anymore. Do you want to know why? Because I'm standing with my brothers and sisters in front of me, and that's what you are. And we are a team, and we are a family, and there's a reason why Jews always persevere, right? There is. Let's talk about the lighter note, because we always stick together as a family. And the quicker we all realize that we're not enemies and we're all Jews with one single fight ahead to eliminate Hamas and anti-Semitism from the world, we will be a better place, and Hashem knows it. Am Yisrael Chai.
Next, we have a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Stanton.
Thank you very much, Chairman McCall. Representative Miller, that was very beautiful words. We are here in a unequivocal, in a bipartisan way. So great to see members standing together to be absolutely clear. Bring them home now. We appreciate your leadership and your courage to be here right now with us. We want to thank Chairman McCall, Ranking Member Meeks, the AGC, and of course especially the families here with us today who have been living a never-ending nightmare for the last 2 months. 2 months their loved ones have been held in tunnels in unknowable conditions by Hamas terrorists. I'm thankful that the Biden administration, with our international partners, were able to help secure more than 100 hostages. That number includes Abigail Eden, who turned 4 in captivity. Her family lives in my home state in Arizona. Those family members have parents who survived the Holocaust. They pleaded for Abigail's life and for their freedom. It's a position that no parent, no grandparent, no brother or sister should ever be in. And of course, right now there are still more than 100 hostages from countries all across the world, including our fellow Americans who are held in these horrific conditions. For peace to prevail, every single hostage must come home now. That is why we are here, to make that unequivocal demand. Hamas must surrender, and every hostage must come home immediately. That is what we owe their families, and Hamas must be fully defeated so that this can never, ever happen again.
Next, we have a leader of the Jewish community in the Congress, Representative Josh Gottheimer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. And I just want to say, like Max did, I think the most important thing I heard him just say, which is how I feel, you're not alone. And I can't imagine what it's like for you, and none of us can, right? I mean, we've had our experiences with our families, the Holocaust, and I, met my grandparents who escaped the Shoah, but lost all their brothers and sisters. And what I can't imagine is the hole you must wake up with every day. I can't begin to. But I want you to know that our job is to help fill that hole and to make sure that every day we wake up, like I try to do right now, make it very clear to those who seem to sympathize with Hamas, seem to forget what happened on October 7th, how quickly they forget what happened on October 7th, right? We teach Holocaust education because we make sure that no one ever forgets, and yet we're 2 months away and people are waking up forgetting about the atrocities on that day, not just to Americans, but to so many people. And the fact that people remain hostage now, including many Americans, including many Israelis, and people from other countries. And so I can't begin to imagine what you feel, but I want to reiterate to you the people who are here and to so many of us in this building who understand that we will not stop fighting until every single hostage is home, including in Alexander in my district in Tenafly, New Jersey. I've talked to their family all the time, and wonderful, such an incredible family, and such strength. The strength you have is, I don't know how you do it, but understand you literally have everybody behind you. Ignore these few voices of naysayers, ignore them, people who don't understand and don't live in the real world. Our world is making sure we get the hostages home, we crush and kill Hamas, we deliver humanitarian aid, we do the right thing, but every picture of every person comes home with their family. And so know that we won't stop until that happens. Thank you very much. God bless.
And lastly, we have a gentleman from New York, Mr. Dan Goldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Meeks. Thank you all for being here, for being willing to continue to stand up and tell your stories. Now 60 days with your family members held hostage. One of the things that is incredibly frustrating that I hear very frequently right now is people excuse Hamas's actions because they say Hamas is a terrorist organization, and therefore, what do you expect? What I expect is for the entire international community to speak out and to put pressure on Hamas through whatever country they have access to or influence over to tell Hamas that their illegal abduction and hostage-taking and captivity of innocent civilians is not acceptable. We cannot talk about any end to any of the hostilities until the innocent, illegally captured civilians are returned home. And what we are now learning, as some of them, thankfully, have been released, is that the conditions that they are in are horrific. They are not getting daily medication that many need to survive. The State Department has now announced that it believes that part of the reason that Hamas ended the ceasefire is because they would not turn over hostages for fear of what they would say about what has happened to them in captivity. And finally, I will add an additional note, which is not nearly sufficient for the families here, nor is it sufficient for any of us, but is still urgently necessary. Hamas is also violating international law by preventing the International Red Cross from getting access to the hostages, to check on them, to provide medication, to ensure that their medical health is okay. That is not okay. And Qatar and Egypt and Jordan and every single United Nations and every single international organization and country around this world must make it clear that that is not okay and must ensure that the International Red Cross, pursuant to human rights law, gets access to these hostages to ensure that while they are illegally abducted and while Hamas continues to hold them hostage, that they are at least being kept healthy and given their medication and ensured that they are safe. And we will not stop raising this issue until the hostages are brought home, because we cannot let October 7th die, and we cannot let all of these family members remain there for another day. So thank you all for being here, for telling your story, for lifting up all of your family members. I wish it weren't so necessary for you to do it, but unfortunately it is, and so we're very grateful that you're here. Thank you.
Yes, we've also talked to ambassadors from the relevant countries in the Middle East. I think this has to be a team effort, if you will, between Jordanians to the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, all working together to try to bring an end to this war as soon as possible and bring the hostages home. And then the question is, what happens after? when this is over. As the Prime Minister told us and the Minister of Defense, Israel has no intention of occupying Gaza. They don't want Hamas to occupy Gaza. They want the Palestinian people to govern themselves in Gaza along with the West Bank. And I think if anything positive comes out of this tragedy, is that there is going to be with the king of Saudi Arabia and the crown prince a very strong effort to bring true peace in the Middle East. I think if anything, this invasion of Israel by Hamas has highlighted that no more. No more. In fact, I would argue the reason Israel was invaded by Hamas was the fact that the Saudis were getting so close to a normalization agreement with Israel. And it also just happened to be the 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur. We can't lose sight of that fact, that out of this darkness, out of this tragedy, will come a very positive day, the strongest movement for peace in the Middle East, but it will entail all of the partners in the region, and particularly our Arab partners in the region, like the Saudis, UAE, Jordan, and Egypt. And I know Mr. Meeks has been in touch with our counterparts. I have as well. And I think that there's any positive thing out of this nightmare is that good could come out of it. And the lightness will come out of this darkness. Mr. Meeks.
I'll associate myself with the remarks of the chairman. I think it should be a global dialogue and conversation. Yeah. I think your point is exactly right. I know when I talk to individuals, your question was specifically with reference to the Western Hemisphere. We've got to have that conversation. I do with any and every ambassador that I meet, no matter where they're from. We've got to speak with one voice because this is a humanitarian cause. If you are a human being, if you have any values at all, you should be talking about bringing these hostages home. You should be talking about trying to make sure that there's a true peace in the Middle East. You should be talking about how we can do that. You know, for a long while, I think Mr. McCall is exactly right. All Hamas was formed for only one reason: to try to destroy Israel. That's not me saying that. Read their manifesto. And so that's why I start with the question is, at the beginning, all of us have to ask ourselves, does Israel have the right to exist? And if you agree with me that Israel has the right to exist, if you agree with me that we need to make sure that there is peace in the Middle East, then whatever country you're coming from, whoever you may be, that should be your driving force. And you should say to Hamas, because that's where the pressure seems to have left, that the world is against you. You can say that to Hezbollah or Iran or anyone who believes that Israel does not have the right to exist. And so, yes, we talk to our ambassadors in that regard. I'll just say this, you know, I've been to Israel a number of times. And when you just walk the streets of Israel, as many of these hostages are right now, who worked with Palestinians, who all they wanted was peace. If you would have talked to, like many of these hostages right now, who said, we have nothing against the Palestinian people. We want to figure out how we can live side by side in peace and freedom and be able to share with one another. But that can't happen if you have one side that says you don't have the right to exist. How can you negotiate peace if someone says you don't have the right to exist? And when you look at what has taken place and what took place on October the 7th, to show the inhumanity of Hamas, number one, they don't care about the Palestinian people. Because if they did, they wouldn't use them as human shields. They don't care about the life of Palestinians. They've said it. They said that's the sacrifice that one has to make to get rid of Israel. So we should all say we want a different world and say to Hamas, no more. And then Mr. McCall is right. I concur with him on this. Then we all need to come together and work together to make sure that there is no Hamas and we can build a peaceful country that's not headed by Hamas, that's not headed by someone that says Israel doesn't have the right to exist, that's not headed by someone that is full of hate. Do you think Hamas is not full of hate? Look what they did to babies. Look what they did to seniors and continue to do. We need to make sure that Hamas acknowledges the right of Israel to exist. Because if you do that, then you can talk peace. Then you're on the right side. But if you don't do that, if you continue to say that Israel does not have the right to exist, then I say you're on the wrong side of history.
Thank you. We're praying for your loved ones.
Thank you for your time.
Humanity. We want your hostages, ma'am.